The door chimed when she pushed it open. She stood in the doorway for exactly 3 seconds. She registered the smell of old paper and cold air, something brewing in the back, and the light falling across a stack of books on the floor like it had been aimed there on purpose. Then the light found her, and she stepped inside. The man behind the counter looked up. He did not say anything. His hands stayed on the book he was repairing, a cloth-bound spine, a pot of glue, a thin brush. He looked at her, and then he looked past her at the door, as if the cold air that followed her in told him something the sound of the bell had not. He was already moving. He walked past the counter, past the display table with the photography monographs, past the stack of German art journals, and stopped in front of a shelf against the far wall, 3rd row from the bottom. He pulled out a book without looking at the spine.
Wabi?
Sabi, further thoughts. He held it out to her. She took it. The cover was warm, as if he had been carrying it in his hand for a while, or the shelf was closer to the radiator than she had thought. "Was I that obvious?" she asked. "No," he said. "You just looked like you would know what to do with it." She flipped through the book. Not new. Second-hand, maybe third. Marginalia in pencil, Japanese characters she could not read. A receipt from a bookstore in Kyoto tucked between pages 112 and 113. 2008.
Should I ask how much?
The price is on the back cover. She turned it over. There was no price. Just a handwritten sticker. Still a Ben, and under it, a number so low she thought she had misread it.
That is less than the shipping from Japan.
"Then it is a good deal," he said, without looking up. Bent over the spine, the brush moving in slow, deliberate strokes. She looked at him again. Mid-30s, maybe. A face that had been looked at before, a thin scar above his left eyebrow, hands that knew what they were doing. She put the book under her arm. "I will take it." He nodded without looking up. "The bag is by the door." She paid, put the book in the brown paper bag, and left. The cold hit her face like a wall. She was halfway down the street before she realized she had not asked his name. 2 days later, she went back, not for the book. She had finished it at 2 a.m. with a cup of tea that had gone cold hours ago. She went back because she wanted to see if he would remember her. He did not look up when she came in. "Brought a friend?" he said, still reading. She walked the shelves this time. 3 rows of architecture and design, a section of Scandinavian crime novels, a shelf of poetry. She stopped at a framed photograph hanging between 2 shelves, black and white. A building, concrete, unfinished, a staircase that led to a wall where a door should have been. No people. She looked at the bottom left corner for a credit line. There was none. "Who shot that?" "Which one?" he asked without turning. "The staircase."
The one that goes nowhere?
He said. "It has a destination," she said. "It just does not know it yet." He paused mid-motion. "A book halfway to the shelf. E.F." He said. "The initials. Bottom right corner, small." She squinted. The print was dark there, almost black. "I take pictures of buildings that were never finished." That one is from a series on abandoned public infrastructure. 12 images. One more shelf over. If you are interested,
You know.
if you put a name tag on, this would go a lot faster.
I know.
She bought the book on Con and a collection of Rilke. He watched her pick the second one, and his mouth did something that was not quite a smile. "That one has been there for 2 years," he said. "Then it has been waiting for me." The 3rd time, she came in with a question. She put the book from Kyoto on the counter, open to page 102, where a passage about impermanence was underlined, and next to it, a sketch of a room with a window that had no glass. "A former owner," he said. "That is not an answer. It is the only one I have." He looked right at her, steady and unhurried, and she understood he was deciding how much to tell her. She decided not to push. Instead, She pointed at a different photograph behind the counter. That one is new. It is good.
I know.
You do not accept compliments well, do you? I accept them fine, I just do not pretend I did not hear what I heard. She laughed. A real one. Mostly air. He looked at her, and his mouth did the full thing. Would you like tea? He asked.
I would.
Good. It is over. Brewed. That is how I make it. Then I will drink it slowly. She sat on a stool behind the counter, in the space he had cleared by moving a stack of unsorted books, and watched the light change through the window. He worked in silence, and the silence was the kind that did not ask to be filled. I'm here for 3 months, curatorial project at the City Museum, the old municipal site. I know the site. Everyone knows the site. It has been empty for 15 years. He paused. I know the original site. My father was on the design team, he said flatly. He had the drawings in his study for years. She could feel the question in her throat, but something in his voice stopped her. Can I come back tomorrow? She asked instead. It is a bookstore. It is open. That is not an answer. It is the same answer you got yesterday. Yesterday I did not ask. He looked up.
Recognition.
Then yes. She washed her cup in the small sink, dried it with her sleeve, and put it back on the shelf. Lynn, she said from the door. My name? Inside. Elias put down the brush and looked at the door for a long moment. He did not write down her name. He did not need to. Outside, the light was fading over Karsund, and the bookstore smelled like paper in winter. She did not tell anyone about the bookstore, not because she was hiding it, because she did not know what to say. It sounded like the beginning of a story she had not decided she was in yet. The project site was a 15-minute walk from the hotel. She took it every morning, past the canal, past the bakery where the same woman sold her the same cardamom bun without asking. Karsund was small enough that after 3 days, she felt like she knew its rhythm. On the 4th day, she took a different route home. She told herself it was to see the bridge. It was not. She walked past the museum, past the post office, past the square with the bronze statue, and then she was standing at the corner of the street where the bookstore was. Still a Ben? A green sign, hand painted. The letters slightly uneven, as if someone had done it themselves carefully without a stencil. Underneath, in smaller letters, old and rare books, open when the light is good. She could see him through the window. He was standing at the counter, talking to someone. A woman in a gray coat holding a book. He was nodding. Not his customer. Service nod. The real one? The one that meant he was actually listening. She did not go in. She walked home, made tea, opened the wabi-sabi book to the page with the receipt from Kyoto. 2008. She searched the name of the bookstore on the receipt. It was still there. The next day, she went back. She pushed the door open. The bell chimed, and he looked up from a laptop, which surprised her. Did not peg you for a laptop person, she said. I am not. Sometimes I have to email someone about books. The staircase in the window is the same building.
Is not it?
Yes. He walked to the window display, lifted the photograph off its stand, and brought it back to the counter. Look at the bottom edge.
E.
F. 2017. The underground terminal was closed off in 2018. Not officially. In practice, they welded the access doors shut. How did you get in? I knew someone who had a key. He paused. He is dead now.
So you cannot ask him.
She put the photograph down. His face was steady, but his hands had found the glue pot and the brush. I'm not asking, she said. I know.
But you are telling me anyway.
Am I? 10 minutes passed. 20. I started the series before my father died, he said without looking up. She did not move. He was the one with the key. The drawings were in his study, but the key was in his coat pocket. I found it after the funeral. I told myself I would go once. For the pictures. I went back 12 times over 3 years. Different buildings, different seasons. Project was led by a man named S. Ren Allman. She recognized the name. Allman was in the museum archives. He is not alive either. No, but his daughter is. I wrote to her. She lives in Oslo. She has all his papers, including the original drawings for the freight terminal. I asked to see them. She said no. Did she tell you why? She said the project was dead and it should stay dead. But you do not agree. I think dead projects and unfinished buildings are different things. One has something to say. The other just stopped. Can I see your photographs? She asked. The full series, not just the ones on the wall. He looked at her. Tomorrow, he said. It is a bookstore. It is open. She walked home with a book under her arm. She searched S. Ren Allman. There was not much. She opened a PDF of a lecture he had given. First line, a building is never finished. It is only abandoned. She read it twice. Next morning, she stood outside the museum before it opened. She walked the perimeter of the old market building, locked and fenced. Through the gaps she could see concrete pillars, a collapsed section of roof. When she finally walked to the bookstore, it was past noon. The sign was out. The door was locked. She checked the hours in the window. Open when the light is good. The light was good. She waited. Then she left a note under the door. The next morning, she woke earlier than usual. She walked to the bookstore at 7:30, before the bakery was open. She wanted to be there first, so that when he arrived, she was already waiting. He came at 8:12, in a gray coat, carrying a paper bag from the bakery. He saw her on the step and did not look surprised. "You are early," he said.
So are you.
He disappeared into the back room and came back with a cardboard box. 12 prints, unmounted, in clear sleeves. He laid them out on the counter in a single row from left to right, like a timeline. She looked at each one. A hotel lobby with furniture under sheets, a school hallway ending in a brick wall, a train station platform with no tracks, a bridge that stopped mid-canal, and the last one she did not recognize.
That is not abandoned.
She said. It is. It has a chair. The chair is what makes it abandoned. Someone left it behind. That is the difference between an empty room and an abandoned one.
Which one is your favorite?
He looked at the whole row, from the first to the last. The one I have not taken yet, he said. How many people have seen these? 2. You and the person who gave me the key. They said I should show them to someone who would understand. He looked at her. I decided you might be. She sat on her stool, and he made tea, and the light moved across the floor while they drank it. When she left, the bell chimed once, outside. She stood for a moment, letting the cold settle on her face. She started going every day, between the 3rd visit and the 7th. The bookstore became part of her route. Museum in the morning, lunch at the bakery, an hour at Stilleben in the afternoon, then home. On the 8th day, she walked in and he had a cup of tea waiting on the counter. Her side, the side where she sat, she picked it up. It was too hot. She felt it through the ceramic, a sharp heat that made her want to put it down. But she did not. She held it, shifted it from one hand to the other, and brought it to her lips. Most people would say it is too hot.
I know.
And you do not care? I care. I just do not change it. It is how I make it. If someone wants it cooler, they can wait. She laughed. A real one this time. Not air, a sound that surprised her as much as it surprised him. He looked up, his mouth doing something that was not quite a smile. Keep laughing, he said.
I plan to.
On the 10th day, she found the drawing. A piece of tracing paper, folded in quarters, tucked between pages 44 and 45 of a book on Alvar Aalto. A cross section of a building. She unfolded it carefully. In the bottom corner, in pencil, Karsund, Section A, 1987. The line work was precise but soft, a sketch in the process of becoming a plan. She turned the tracing paper over. On the back, in the same hand, why does the light come in if no one is there to see it? She folded the paper back the way it had been, put it back between pages 44 and 45, closed the book. When he came back from the back room, she was reading something else. The next day, she opened the book on alto to the same page. The tracing paper was gone. She flipped through the entire book. Nothing. She looked at him. He was at the counter, his back to her. Did you take the drawing out of the alto book? He did not turn. What drawing? The one that was between pages 44 and 45. He turned around. That is not a sketch. It is a question. I'm asking you about the sketch, and I am telling you it is not about the sketch. I did not take it out. I put it in 3 years ago, before I opened the shop. I found a stack of drawings in my father's things. I put one in a book that I thought someone might open someday. How did you know it would be that book? I did not.
Then why that one?
He looked at her for a long time. Because it was the one I wanted someone to find. She picked up the alto book and looked at the empty space where the tracing paper had been. She felt like she had missed something important, but she did not know what. Next day, she did not go to the bookstore. She needed to think. And she could not think in a room where the man behind the counter knew what she was going to ask before she opened her mouth. She spent the day at the museum archives, pulling every folder that mentioned Allman and Partners. 15 years of correspondence, site, surveys, cost estimates. A single photograph from 1986. She copied the photograph with her phone and walked home in the dark, the image sitting in her camera roll like a secret she had not earned the right to look at. She walked into Stilleben and found him shelving books. He did not look up. You did not come yesterday.
I know.
I made tea anyway.
You have dust on your sleeve, museum archive dust. It is different from street dust. You notice dust? I run a bookstore. Dust is my business. The rest of that week, she came every afternoon. He made tea. She drank it too hot. He repaired books. She read. The silence between them had changed. It was the silence of two people who had agreed that words were not required. On Thursday, she walked in and found a new photograph on the wall. A door. Wooden, peeling paint, a single window at eye level. The window was dark.
The freight terminal.
The access door on the canal side. She looked at it. The shadow behind the glass could have been anything. You did not get inside. No. Did you try?
Once?
The weld was still new. I could smell the metal. I stood there for an hour and then I walked home. Why? He paused. Because I was not ready to see what was on the other side. Are you ready now? She asked. He did not answer. But he did not say no. That night, she lay awake and thought about the tracing paper. She searched the phrase online. No results. She tried it in German. Nothing. She lay back and looked at the ceiling. It was not a rhetorical question. It was a real one, asked by someone who had stood in an empty room and needed to know. She thought about Elias putting a drawing in a book and waiting 3 years for someone to open it. She woke early the next morning, before the light had reached the street. She made coffee and drank it, standing at the window. Watching the canal turn from black to gray, she stood outside the gate of the old market building, her breath visible in the cold. She had not planned what she was going to do. She just knew she needed to be at the actual site. The building had no roof. The morning light came in at an angle, cutting across the concrete floor in long strips. She walked to the center of the space and stood where the light was strongest. She heard herself say the line from the tracing paper. Why does the light come in if no one is there to see it? It was not her voice. It was the voice on the paper, but she had said it out loud, and the empty building had heard her. She walked to the far end of the hall where a chain link fence blocked access. Through the fence, she could see a door, metal, padlocked, a sign in Norwegian. She took a photograph with her phone. She arrived at Stilabin in the early afternoon. He was at the counter, reading. He did not look up when she came in. "I went to the site this morning," she said.
I said the line out loud.
From the tracing paper. He closed the book and looked at her.
And what did it answer?
She thought about it. Nothing. Which was the answer I needed. The exhibition theme has to be about space after use. But that is not enough,
Show both.
he said. The plan and the ruin, side by side. Let the visitor do the math. The next day, she went to the archive again. She spread the almond folder across the table. At the bottom, a single folded piece of tracing paper. She stopped breathing. She unfolded it slowly, an elevation of the canal side of the freight terminal, drawn in clean architectural lines, labeled in precise block capitals. At the bottom, S. Ullman, 1987. She held it up to the light. The lines were faint, a blueprint that had been photocopied onto tracing paper. A reproduction. Not an original. But it was in the archive. Someone had put it there. She folded it carefully and placed it back where she had found it. She did not take a photograph. She did not need to. She went back to the bookstore at closing time. He was putting covers on the shelves. White sheets, like the ones in the hotel lobby photograph. I found another tracing paper in the archive. An elevation of the canal side. I think your father was the one who put it there. He stopped still. A white sheet half draped over a shelf. After the project collapsed the second time, he was going to the archive and filing copies of drawings that no one would ever need. He looked at her.
Except you.
Except me.
She helped him cover the rest of the shelves. They worked in silence. By the time they finished, the street was dark and the shop was a room of white shapes, like a gallery before a show. He locked the door. They stood outside on the pavement, the cold rising from the stones. What will you do with it? I do not know. You could put it in a gallery. He looked at her. Someone, he said. Or some one person. She walked away. At the corner, she turned back. He was still standing there, hands in his coat pockets, looking at the green sign that said Stillaben. She stopped at the railing along the canal and looked down. The water was moving, slow and dark. She thought about the tracing paper in the archive, and his father filing copies of drawings that no one visited. Her apartment was warm. She hung her coat, made tea too hot, and sat by the window. In her bag, the museum project folder was waiting. She did not open it. She sat holding the cup, thinking about him outside the covered bookstore. She started bringing work to the bookstore. She sat up at the small table near the poetry section. Her laptop open, the project files spread around her like a claim on the space. On the third day of this arrangement, she was stuck. She had been staring at the site plan for 40 minutes. The footprint was wrong, but she could not see why.
Problem?
He was standing at the end of her table, a book in his hand.
The footprint is wrong.
The archive drawing does not match the original brief. He looked at her screen. The 1986 brief was scaled back before the competition closed. Budget cuts. The underground connection was removed from the requirements, but they built a structural allowance. I read about it in the local newspaper microfilm. I spent a winter at the library. The building was built with a door that was never installed, a corridor that was never dug.
Why did not the archivist tell me this?
He keeps what is given to him. He does not fill in the gaps. And you fill in the gaps? Can I see the microfilm? It is in the library basement. You need an appointment. Make one. He looked at her, measuring. I will call tomorrow, he said. He called the next morning. Thursday, 10 a.m. The librarian is Ingrid. She will let us into the basement. Us? I'm not letting you go through 40 years of microfilm alone. Thursday morning, she met him at the library steps. He was early. She was earlier.
I am always early for things that matter.
You do not know this matters yet. I know you called a librarian to get me into a basement. That is not nothing. Ingrid was behind the front desk. A woman in her 60s with glasses on a chain. She looked up when they walked in.
Elias.
It has been a while. She pulled a key from a drawer and handed it to him, not to Lynn. They walked down a narrow staircase into a room that smelled of dust and old paper. A single microfilm reader sat on a metal table. A stack of labeled boxes beside it. The competition was announced in early '86. They took turns cranking through the reels. Then, March 1986, new Market Hall to transform waterfront. The underground connection was described as a central feature. April 1986, Market Hall design finalists announced. 6 firms. Ullman and Partners was listed third. Third out of 6? They did not win. September 1987. A short article. Market Hall contractor withdraws. 1 year! They built the shell and the money ran out. The shell sat empty for 2 years before the city tried again.
When did your father die?
2018. The second revival collapsed in 2015. He died 3 years later. He died while the building was still standing. The building will outlast all of us. She pulled out her phone and took a photograph of the screen.
What are you doing?
Documenting.
This might go in the exhibition. They have all this at the museum archive. I know, but I want it from here.
From this morning.
Sentimental, he said. Maybe. He turned back to the screen. There is an article from 1991 you should see. She leaned in. His shoulder brushed hers. Neither of them moved away. They emerged into the afternoon light. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the square.
Thank you.
She said.
For what?
For the microfilm? For calling Ingrid? For the morning? When you stood outside the canal door that day? You said you were not ready. Did something happen between 2018 and 2019? He was quiet. My father died in 2018. The year after, I started taking pictures of things he had left unfinished. And the door? The door was the last one. She did not ask what he meant. The answer was already sitting between them. I will walk you home.
You do not have to.
I know.
They walked along the canal without speaking, at her door. She turned. Thursday was good. It was. Good night. Elias? She sat in her apartment without turning on a lamp. The city was gray and quiet, and she did not need more light to see where she was going. She invited him for dinner on a Sunday. Not a date. She had too much food from the market. She texted him at noon. I have too much food. Come at 7. Or do not. He arrived at 7.
Oh.
2. Carrying a paper bag. A small tin of loose leaf tea, wrapped in brown paper, with a handwritten label, Genmaicha?
Roasted rice.
Karsund is not Tokyo.
But it is what I have.
Her apartment was small, a living room that doubled as a workspace, a window facing the canal. He stood in the center of the room and looked around. Not like inspecting? Like he wanted to remember what he saw. He sat on the edge of the sofa, the tea tin in his hands. She could feel him watching her cook. Not staring, but observing, the same way he observed the light in his shop. He picked up a book from the stack and opened it. You bought this in Osaka. She stopped stirring.
How do you know?
There is a receipt inside, in Japanese, dated 2019. Yoshida Books, Osaka. That is in the Shinsekai district. Old Osaka, a Shotengai that has not changed since the 70s. You know the neighborhood. I bought a book on concrete architecture that I could not read. They ate at her small table, the canal visible through the window. The fish was good. The vegetables were better. The tea he brought was the best she had had since arriving in Karsund. The exhibition at the Bergen Kunsthal, 2021.
You said you were in Bergen that month?
He set down his chopsticks. I did go. Why? Because I knew the person who curated it. The title of the show is from Alman's 2011 lecture. I was in the audience, Oslo School of Architecture. I sat in the back row. I was in architecture school for 1 year. Second year design studio, a municipal library. I worked on it for 3 months. Then I walked out and did not go back. I realized I was designing buildings I would never want to see.
So you took pictures instead.
Pictures of buildings that were designed but never built. She looked at him.
That is not quitting.
That is finding another way in. After dinner, they stood by the window. He pointed across the canal.
That is the freight terminal.
The canal side door. You can see it from here. I know. I have stood at this window before 3 years ago. I was in this apartment once. It was being renovated. The door was open. I walked in. She did not know what to say. He had stood at this same window 3 years before she had ever heard of Karsund. Do you know what I thought when I stood in this room 3 years ago? I thought someone will live here someday and they will never know that across the canal there is a door that has been welded shut. They will never wonder what is behind it. And now, he turned to her. Now I have told you about it. He left at 10. At the door, he paused. The dinner was good.
I know.
He almost smiled.
Do not use my lines.
They are good lines. He stepped out and started down the stairs. Elias? He stopped, turned. Thank you. For the window. He looked at her, then nodded and continued down the stairs. She closed the door and looked at the window. In the glass, she saw only her own reflection. She cleared the table, washed the dishes. When she was done, she stood by the window, looking at the light across the canal. The exhibition opening was on a Friday. She had spent the entire week at the museum, sleeping 4 hours a night, eating, standing up, answering emails with one hand while holding a staple gun with the other. By Friday morning, it was done, the plan and the ruin, side by side, with a third element she had added, a timeline of the site's history from the microfilm articles. She stood in the center of the gallery at 4 p.m. and looked at what she had made. She texted him, "It opens at 5. You should come." He replied, "I know." The crowd arrived. The director made a speech. She stood near the entrance, answering questions, shaking hands. She kept glancing at the door. At 5:45, he was not there. At 6:30, she saw him. He was standing at the far end of the gallery, in front of the timeline panel. He was wearing a dark coat with his hands in his pockets, looking at the microfilm photographs she had taken at the library. She excused herself and walked toward him.
You came.
She said. I said I would.
You said I know.
That is the same thing. She stood beside him and looked at the panel. What do you think? The article on the contractor withdrawal next to the photograph of the empty shell.
That is good sequencing.
Thank you.
The wall text could be shorter. She laughed. He turned to look at her. You did this in 5 weeks? 4. I spent the first week lost.
And now?
She looked at the gallery. Now I think I found what I was looking for. She felt a small absence in her chest when she realized he had left. She excused herself and walked to the museum entrance. The cold hit her. He was sitting on the bottom step, his back to her, looking at the canal. She sat down beside him on the stone step.
Thank you for coming.
I wanted to see it. See what? He was quiet. I wanted to see you in your element. She looked at him.
And
He turned to her. You looked like you belonged there. When did you know I was in Karsund? The day you walked into my shop? I recognized your face.
Bergen.
2021. You were standing near the entrance with a badge that said curatorial assistant. I noticed you because you were the only person in the room having a real conversation. I looked up your name.
I read your contributor bio.
8 lines. You had just finished your master's. You wrote your thesis on temporary public spaces. You read my thesis abstract because you saw me in a gallery.
Yes.
She laughed. I was going to say, that is the most romantic thing anyone has ever done without intending to be romantic. He looked at her. I intended it. When I came to Karsund,
I did not know what I was looking for.
I knew what the project was. But now I think I came here to find the person who saw me in Bergen. She reached out and touched his forearm. Just once. Lightly. Then she pulled her hand back.
I am glad you came.
I'm glad I did. When she came out an hour later, the square was empty. He was gone. But on the step where he had been sitting, there was a small white card. On it, in handwriting she recognized, you looked like you were exactly where you were supposed to be. She put it in her coat pocket and walked home through the empty streets. She did not take the card out when she got home. She hung her coat by the door, left the card where it was, and went to bed. For the first time in weeks, she did not feel like she was waiting for something. The snow started on a Tuesday. She had been in Karsund for 6 weeks. That evening she walked to the bookstore. He was at the counter, just sitting, looking at the window where the last of the snow was melting. The canal side door. Can you get us in? He looked at her. Why? Because I want to see the room behind the door. The one you have been standing outside of for 7 years.
I have been inside before.
Not with someone else. He looked at his hands.
I know someone who still has a key.
The next morning, they stood at the canal side of the freight terminal. The door was exactly as he had photographed it. Peeling paint. A dirty window at eye level. The darkness behind it, absolute. He fit the key into the padlock. The lock opened with a sound too loud in the silence. He pushed. The hinges screamed. He stepped through, and she followed. The inside was not what she had expected. A room, tall and narrow, concrete walls, dirt floor. At the far end, a rusted metal door with no window. He walked to the center and stopped. This is where I took the first photograph. The staircase. It was here. The staircase was removed between the first time I came and the second. They cut it out and took it away. If you did not know it had been here, you would never guess. My father designed that staircase. He said it was the best thing he ever made. A staircase that goes nowhere because it was perfect. A staircase that goes somewhere has to be functional. A staircase that goes nowhere can be anything. After he died, I found notes he had left. 30 years of thoughts he had never said out loud. In books, in drawers, in the margins of newspapers. I spent a year reading them a few at a time. He wrote that he hoped someone would find it beautiful before it was gone. By the time I read that note, the staircase was already gone. He walked to the rusted door at the far end and put his hand on the cold metal. There were other notes about the project, about the city council meeting where they voted to cancel the second revival. At the bottom, he wrote, "The building will outlast them all." I left architecture school because I did not want to build things that would be removed. I wanted to make things that stayed. And the photographs? The photographs stay.
The buildings do not.
I have been carrying it for 7 years. Standing in front of doors I would not open. But you opened this one. He looked at her. Because you were here. She walked to the outer door, the one with the dirty window, and put her hand on the glass. If this door opened, you would be standing where you stood 7 years ago, looking at the same building. Yes. Sometimes you need to see a door from both sides before you understand why you were standing outside in the first place. He looked at her. Where did you learn that?
Curation.
It is the same thing. When she said no, Allman's daughter, I stopped working on the series. I put the 12 photographs in a box and opened a bookstore. And then I walked in. And then you walked in. I am here for 3 more weeks. After that, the exhibition closes and I go back to wherever the next project takes me. But I wanted to see this room. Because of you. They stepped out of the terminal and she locked the padlock behind them. They walked along the canal without speaking. The snow had stopped for good. The ground was wet, but the sky was clear. At the bridge, she stopped. I will walk the rest alone. He nodded. Thank you for opening the door. Thank you for being on the other side. She walked across the bridge. When she reached the far bank, she turned back. He was still standing where she had left him, looking at the terminal building, his hands in his coat pockets. The day after the terminal, she went back to the archive. She pulled every folder related to the freight terminal, competition briefs, structural reports, correspondence. At the bottom of the third box, a manila envelope marked Student Work, Bergen School of Architecture, 1982. Inside were 5 sheets of tracing paper, yellowed at the edges. A student project? A freight terminal for the Karsund Canal. The line work was rough, unpolished, but the concept was there. At the bottom of the first sheet, in pencil, S. Allman, 1982. She stared at it. He had designed the freight terminal as a student project. 8 years before the city commission, he had drawn it at 22. His firm had submitted it at 30. And then, for 30 years, someone kept filing copies of it in an archive no one visited. 3 generations of the same door. She took a photograph and closed the envelope. Her phone buzzed. Did you find what you were looking for? She smiled. I found Allman's student project. 1982. He drew the terminal before the city asked for it. She met him at the museum the next morning. They sat at a table in the reference room, and she slid the drawings across to him. He opened the envelope carefully. The way he handled old books. He looked at the drawing for a long time. The line work, he did not use a straight edge. He drew them freehand, and then went back to correct the angles. You can see where the paper has been rubbed thin from erasing. He carried this for 30 years. From a student project to a competition entry to a dead file in the city archive. He never built it, but he never stopped drawing it. She walked him through the empty gallery. This is where the student drawings will go, opposite the timeline. So visitors can see the beginning and the end at the same time. You are telling a story.
I am curating one.
You told me to show both sides. I said the plan and the ruin. 2 people. 2? Allman and my father. One drew it. The other filed it. Both spent years on a building that never opened. Your father filed that drawing in 2015. 3 years before he died, after the second revival had already failed. He knew the building would never open, but he put it in the archive anyway.
Yes. Why did he do it?
Because he believed that a building that was drawn carefully enough could exist without being built. The drawings themselves were the building, just in a different form.
And you?
I take photographs of buildings that were never finished. I repair books other people have broken. Did you ever wish you had seen the staircase?
I used to.
I spent years being angry that I missed it, that by the time I knew it existed, it was already gone.
And now?
Now I think I saw it anyway. I saw it through the notes he left, through the photographs of the space where it used to be, and through you, through the way you talked about it, like you could see it too. She walked home through the square. Through the bakery window she could see the bookstore, the green sign. The light was on. She finished her bun and walked home without looking back. That night, she opened her laptop and looked at the photograph of Allman's student drawing. She zoomed in on the corners where the eraser marks were visible. She traced the same line Elias had traced with his finger. The second opening was different, not because the work was better. The difference was in her. She stood in the center of the gallery an hour before the doors opened and felt something she had not expected: calm. She had spent 4 days deciding where to put the photograph. She had moved it 3 times. On the 4th day, she hung it in the center of the third wall, directly opposite the entrance. The label was small and precise. A door. A window. A shadow. No people. She touched the frame with her fingertip and adjusted it by a millimeter. She had printed it and hung it before she knew how to tell him. The crowd arrived at 5:08. The same director, the same wine, the same clusters of people. She answered the same questions, but this time she did not mind the repetition. She knew the story she was telling. 60. She saw the door open and he stepped inside. He stood at the entrance, not stepping in further, just looking. His eyes moved across the room, and then they stopped at the third wall. She excused herself and walked toward him across the gallery. She stopped beside him in front of the photograph. "I did not ask," she said.
I know.
"The label says photographer unknown. I did not know if you would want your name on it." "Why did you choose this one?" She looked at the photograph. "Because it is the one you had not taken yet, and then you took it. And now it is here." The framer wanted to trim the edges of the student drawings. I told him not to.
Why?
Because the yellowing is part of the object. If you trim it, you lose the history. He looked at her. "You think like a curator?" "I think like someone who was taught by a bookseller." He almost smiled. "I did not teach you that."
You showed me.
"That is the same thing." She watched him move through the gallery. He stopped at the timeline, studied each microfilm article. He spent a long time in front of the student drawings, his head tilted slightly, reading the lines. She watched a woman stop in front of his photograph. "Read the label. Move on." The woman had no idea the photographer was standing 3 meters away. Lynn felt a strange protectiveness, not of the photograph, of him. After the crowd had thinned, she found him in front of the timeline panel. "The exhibition closes at 8. I meant until the end of the night. I am closing up in 15 minutes. Do you want to walk home together?" "Yes." They walked along the canal. "I'm going to update the label. With your name?" "It does not need my name." "I want it to have your name." "Because it is a good photograph, and because when I look at it, I think of you." At her door, she turned to him. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for the invitation." "I did not send an invitation." "I know." "I came anyway." She walked inside and closed the door. Through the window, she watched him walk away, his hands in his coat pockets, his silhouette moving through the yellow light until it disappeared. The day after the opening, she asked him to take her to the fjord, not the tourist one, the one at the end of the bus line that did not run on Sundays. The fjord is an hour by bus, then a walk. "I have time."
You have an exhibition?
"The exhibition is open. It does not need me today." He picked up his coat. "I know a road that ends at the water." The bus was almost empty. They sat in the back side by side, the landscape changing from city to forest. The buildings became fewer, the road narrowed. "How often do you take this bus?" "Once a month. Sometimes more." "The fjord is better when it is cold." "Fewer people." It was just me. Until today. At the end of the line, they got off and walked. The road turned to gravel, then to dirt, then to a path through low bushes. He walked ahead of her. He knew this path. The water appeared between the trees, gray, flat, reaching to the horizon. The fjord opened in front of them like a room without walls. They stood at the edge on a flat rock worn smooth by years of weather. The wind was cold. The water was still. The sky was the same gray as the water. "Why did you stop taking pictures?" "After the 12 photographs, there was nothing left to photograph. I had found all the unfinished buildings I could reach. After that,
I was just repeating myself.
the door was the last one. After I took that photograph, I did not go back to the terminal for a long time. I did not know why. I just knew I could not. Until you. When my father was dying, I was in the room with him. The last day, toward the end, he opened his eyes and looked at me. He said 2 words. The door. Then he closed his eyes. I spent 7 years trying to understand what he meant. I went back to the terminal. I took photographs of every door. I read every note he left. I stood outside the canal door for an hour and could not open it. But you opened it. Because you were here. She looked at him. And what was on the other side? He turned to look at her. A room with no staircase, and a person who could see it even though it was gone. She picked up a flat stone and flicked it across the water. It skipped 3 times and sank. You are a curator, not a rock skipper. I am a lot of things. He picked up a heavier stone. It skipped 4 times.
When did you first come here?
After the funeral. I took the bus to the end of the line and kept walking. I did not know where I was going. I just needed to be somewhere that was not the city. I think your father meant what you think he meant. He designed the staircase. He filed the drawings. He left the notes. He knew you would find them. He was telling you where to go. Elias.
Yes.
I'm leaving in 2 weeks. He nodded. The exhibition will close. I will go where the next project takes me. Does that change anything? He looked at her. It changes the timeline. It does not change the fact that you are here now. They took the last bus back to the city. The sky was dark by the time they reached Karsund. The streets were wet from an evening rain. He walked her to her door. The fjord was beautiful. It is still there. Will you go back?
Yes.
Alone? He looked at her. I do not know yet. She stepped inside and closed the door. Through the window, she watched him walk away. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and held it there until he disappeared. The exhibition closed on a Sunday. She spent the last day walking through the empty gallery. The student drawings had been taken down. The photographs had been packed. Only one thing remained on the wall. His photograph. She took it down herself, carried it to the loading dock, and handed it to the courier. The address on the package was Stileben. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at the museum. Inside was the copy of Wabi Sabi, further thoughts he had handed her on the first day. She opened the front cover. Inside, in his handwriting, Karsund is not Tokyo, but it is what I have. 3 months passed. She was in Rotterdam, then Berlin, then a small city in Poland. The book sat on her desk in every hotel room. Sometimes late at night, she would open it to read the handwriting, then close it and go to sleep. In Berlin, she passed a bookstore that reminded her of Stileben. Same green sign, same window display. She stood outside for 5 minutes before walking away. She did not go in because she knew it would not be the same. In March, the university sent her an email asking if she would be interested in a 2-month research position in Karsund, cataloging a private collection of architectural drawings. She read the email 3 times. Then she replied, yes. Spring came to Karsund slowly. On a Thursday afternoon in early April, a woman walked into Stileben. The bell chimed when she pushed the door open. The shop smelled the same. The man behind the counter looked up. Hello, Elias.
Hello, Lynn.
He set down the book he was repairing and walked around the counter. He stopped in front of her. There is a sign on the door. Stileben, closed Wednesdays for small curatorial projects.
Yes, the freight terminal plans.
Mounted on the wall where your staircase photograph used to be. Who curated it? He looked at her.
I did.
The photograph.
I sent it to you.
Did you open the package? No.
Why not?
Because I was not ready to decide what to do with it until I knew you were coming back. I'm here for 3 weeks. Research project at the university. 3 weeks, give or take. He looked at her.
The sign?
Closed Wednesdays for small curatorial projects. Does that mean you are open to proposals? It means I am open. She stayed until he closed the shop. They walked out together into the spring evening. The air was soft, the light was longer. You were right about the photograph. The label? It is not photographer unknown anymore? No.
What is it?
He stopped walking.
E.
F. 2019. Known now. They passed the freight terminal. Through the fence, she could see the door. It was still welded shut. But the padlock was gone. The chain was gone. You took the lock off. I opened it again after you left. I went back and sat in the room where the staircase used to be. I sat there until the light changed. It felt like sitting in a room that had been waiting for someone to sit in it. Do you remember what you said to me on the first day? When I asked if I could come back tomorrow, you said, "It is a bookstore. It is open." I remember.
I want to tell you that I'm coming back tomorrow.
And the day after, for as long as I am here, at her door. She turned to him.
Wednesday.
The sign says you are closed Wednesdays for curatorial projects. It is Tuesday, so tomorrow you are open?
And I am coming to the bookstore.
I will be there.
She stepped inside. Through the window, she watched him walk away, his hands in his coat pockets. This time, she did not press her palm to the glass. She opened the book on her desk. Karsund is not Tokyo, but it is what I have. She closed it. Tomorrow, she would walk back into the bookstore. The bell would chime. He would look up,